Welcome. You are listening to the Be a Better Being podcast hosted by Michelle Zellner and Sasha Berscheid. Michelle and Sasha are here to give you information and inspiration to help you live your healthiest, happiest lives. Thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoy the show.
Greetings. Thank you for tuning into the Be a Better Being podcast. I'm Michelle Zellner, your host, joined today by my fantastic side host, Sasha. How you doing, darling?
Hello, everyone. So grateful to be here. Truly grateful to be here today.
Well, I'm grateful that you're here too, because I think you are going to love this conversation. I know there are some things in here that you're going to be like, oh yeah, I've done that. And maybe I need to do that. And I'm really delighted to invite Lisa Shultz to the show. So Lisa, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So you and I connected via Polly Lutovsky, a mutual friend and somebody who has helped both of us with our books. I was out for a walk with her a few months ago and telling her that my word for next year is simplify. And she was like, oh, you've got to talk to Lisa. And I was like, okay. And that's what's amazing about Polly. She knows so many amazing people. And you and I had a conversation. And I was like, oh, yes. We have so many podcast episodes just from you. But today we're going to focus on simplifying. So tell the audience just a little bit of your background, and then we'll get into how you got into this concept and this topic and how you use it going forward.
I love to write. I've written multiple nonfiction books, but I love the topic of decluttering, organizing, simplifying, and wrote a book, Lighter Living, about that based on my journey of evolving through different phases of my life. I went from having kids in the house to them leaving, and I was suddenly in an empty nest as well as being single. And that was a huge transition and change. And then also I was faced with the decline and eventual death of both of my parents, who lived separately and had 80 plus years of possessions that they had accumulated in their lives, that I was personally responsible for dealing with every single one of those and deciding what to do with it and where it needed to go as I cleared their house upon their death. And that's a lot. And I learned a lot. I read a lot about the topic, and I wanted to put all of those experiences together to help people work through this process and to think about the benefits and the good things about lighter living and clearing out some of our things.
I love that title, Lighter Living, because it really can mean so many things and maybe something different to each person. I think of even not just possessions, but emotional things that literally weigh us down. And I know I've gone through phases of transition where we accumulate things. That's normal. I mean, Sasha's in that phase right now, right? Where you have young kids and you need things and you need space to put the things. And then the more space you have, the more things you put in it. And so it sometimes can become like this cycle that just doesn't seem to ever end. You know, when I first realized that, oh, I don't want to accumulate, is when I first moved. Like actually moved, not just like went off to college, but when I lived in a house and then I was leaving that house to move to another house. And even though I lived in a very small place, oh my goodness, the stuff. And a lot of that stuff I hadn't looked at in 10 years, and yet I still have it. So there are lots of reasons why we hang on to things, whether it's a thing, an emotion, a person. Mm-hmm. How do you help, or what kind of advice do you have when it comes to evaluating, number one, is this something I should even take on as a possession? First of all, maybe we can avoid it altogether, but maybe once I have it, when do I know that maybe letting go is the right thing to do?
I really encourage us to develop discerning eyes with everything that's around us. That's our stuff, but it's also our schedules and the people in our lives as well. But developing discerning eyes, is it of value to our life now? It may have been in the past, but does it fit now? Do we love that thing or that responsibility or organization or group or whatnot that we're involved in? Or was that something that was in the past that isn't really where we are now? Do we need this thing in our home? Is Is it useful? Or are we truly using it? We have to just really develop discerning eyes with everything that we have and everything that we do, and even the people in our lives as well.
Well, Sasha, I know you and I have had these conversations about the people in our lives. You've done a lot of weeding, and I call it deadheading to the flower garden, right? And I've done some of this as well. And we've all been deadheaded out of people's lives as well. And I think it is one of these natural processes that is so hard to do, which is why we often don't do it. We hang on to things because we feel obligated to hang on to it, or because we maybe are afraid to let it go because of the judgment that might come or the repercussions that might come. And whether it's a person, a thing, or an emotion, hanging on is easier. It just is. Because once you let go, it's sort of final, maybe not necessarily, but it kind of is. And yet I know in my life, whether it's a business partnership or it's a person or it's a thing, anytime I've let go of something, it has created additional, like twice the space that whatever that thing took up, twice the space was opened up to let other things come in. What, Sasha, go ahead. I know you have a lot on this.
It's when it comes to like the materialistic things right now, all that like is jumping in my head is all the Paw Patrol stuff that's in our house, right? Like this Paw Patrol has taken over my living room, my bedroom, my kitchen. There's Paw Patrol everywhere. So like when it comes to thinking about like letting go of things, I can't right now. I cried the other night in bed, cried because there was a Paw Patrol toy that my mom gave Draco, and it sings like a lullaby. And I started bawling because this lullaby, I was like, oh my gosh, someday my kids aren't going to want this toy, and I'm going to be remembering this lullaby and how little they are. And I just started bawling and bawling and bawling. So like, I know eventually I will have to get rid of this toy. And now I know that I'm going to associate this lullaby to when Draco was 4 years old. And I don't think I'm going to be able to do it. I don't think I will literally be able to get rid of this little item, and I will have to bring it or maybe even send a picture so that we can upload it on our social media. But there's this toy that brought me to tears because here I am listening to it at 11 p.m. by myself. My kids are sleeping, and I'm just like, oh, I hate this toy. I love this toy. I hate this toy. And last night we talked, Andrew and I were talking about it. He's like, why don't you just get rid of it? And I'm like, I cannot get rid of this toy. Now, additionally, talking about getting rid of friendships. Last night we had the same conversation. I pulled up someone that I had gone to college with, my closest friend. I don't talk to her anymore. Number one, the situation that I went through and the trauma that I went through with college, she didn't experience. She was doing the same actions as I was doing, but she didn't get any repercussions like I did. So there's a lot of trauma and resentments there. We got pregnant at the same time. Her daughter is the exact same age as Cayenne. She is neurotypical, incredible little girl who just runs around, and I can't watch her little girl be neurotypical, and there's resentments towards that even. So I had to remove that friendship because it's not healthy for me. It is not healthy for me to sit there and click on her pictures and be like almost jealous of a woman. That's not healthy for me. It's not healthy for her. That is one example of a friendship that I let go of. There are multiple other friendships that I let go of this last year that I decluttered. But the ones that were harder were the ones that they removed me with no communication and no closure. So when I think of, starting this minimalistic lifestyle, I think of what am I going to do with all these Paw Patrol toys that are sentimental to me? And then additionally, I think of how many people in the last 2.5 years that either have let go of me and how hard that's been on me and the trauma that I'm unpacking, or the people that I have let go of. And when I see them, like I ran into someone in public 2 days ago that I let go of. And I just like, was like, oh my gosh, like the overwhelming energy that I got and I felt when I saw them, I was like, this is exactly why I let go of them, because I cannot handle it.
So Lisa, what I'm sure these are things that you hear very regularly and probably even experience in some ways yourself. What guidance do you have for someone who's literally like in that phase of having a hard time?
Well, if you're talking about relationships, there are times where we have to, I don't know if let go is even the right word, pause it or put it in a place where it is not in our lives right now. Perhaps it will be down the road, or we will have a healing. But at this time, that relationship may feel like it is not for our well-being. And we have to put a boundary around it, or a pause on it, so that we can nurture and care for ourselves. And that's okay. And it may be a true letting go. It may not come back to us, but for right now, we're letting it go so that we can focus on what we need to, what's important to us, what our purpose is now, and we can reevaluate it later.
I think that's such a great point. You know, the pause, especially when it does come to people, because not everybody is the right person for every minute of your life. And yet you clearly have a strong bond with that person, that particular person, right? And I'm sure it's painful for you to even pause the relationship, but it's self-preservation. And sometimes we sacrifice ourselves because, well, I feel bad cutting this person out of my life. And I feel like I'm supposed to always be in their life, not at your own expense. That's when I think it is healthy for you to recognize, and all of us, and I've done this too. And there's been a person we've talked about on the podcast here. The name is not named, but it was on pause. And the longer the pause has happened, the more I know it is done on my end. It was not done on that person's end because she just reached out to me relatively recently. So now I'm in that phase of deciding, okay, am I going to literally end it and make sure she knows so that there is closure? Or am I going to just kind of let it fizzle and fade away? You know, it doesn't feel good to do that because I think closure is a nice thing for everybody. So I am gearing up to get my thoughts out. And then when I will, you know, send those thoughts on her way, that'll just have to be when I feel like it's good to do. But
I'm so proud of you for wanting to do closure, though, because it is so irritating to me this last 2 years, where people would not talk to me. Like I would say, what is it that I did? Like provide me feedback, because I am human. I'm not perfect. So I want to work on my character defects. And I understand that we're not in a place where we're going to continue to communicate, but at least provide me something so I have closure and I have something to work on. Like give me something, some feedback, so that, yeah, it's going to be hard, but like, let's have these difficult conversations. Like, what is it that I can do to become a better being? Like there's friction between us. I'm not saying that we have to be best friends, acquaintances, followers, connected, whatever, in any form or fashion. But like, come on, let's have a hard conversation. Give me some feedback. This isn't fair for you to just ghost me.
Well, and Lisa, you can probably respond to this. I think that's why we don't do it, because it's hard. And maybe I don't want to tell you the truth, because the truth is yucky and it's going to hurt you and you're going to get defensive and then it's going to be this thing. And I would rather just like let it fizzle, right? We take the easy way out, and we can, and a lot of people do. And I have done it before too. I've done it. I've had it done to me. And one of the things that has helped me get over when I don't have closure from someone is just to recognize that there's no rule that says we have to have closure. It's a nice way to go about life. But you know what? I'll just say, you know what? I wasn't a good fit for that person. They weren't a good fit for me. It's fine. Lisa, when it comes to people and all of the complexities, like what are some ways to help somebody either move through it if they didn't get closure, or embrace going to somebody to give them the closure?
There's a lot in that question for sure. And there's no real easy answer. Relationships are so complex, and we can get triggered by experiences in our life, and we can trigger each other and when we're having conversation. And so at times we have to pause or stop the relationship for ourselves and our peace and our hearts and protect ourselves. And that may be the new direction that we may not return to that relationship, or with time and perspective and healing, perhaps it will be a new relationship down the road. We don't know that right now, but I think that we each have to just focus on our own work, our own healing, and our own process to the best of our abilities, because that's the only thing we have control over. And that goes with our stuff. And that also just goes with how we're feeling about our stuff and our relationships and where our life is. We just have to dive into the deep work. And that is hard. And it does take time. And the more we do our own stuff, the better place that we're going to get. And we may be able to reevaluate those relationships down the road when we get to a better place. But it is hard. And we tend to want to stay away from the hard stuff. And I have to take it in baby steps. And you may need support. You can't tackle some of this tough stuff, whether it's material possessions, emotions, relationships, without support sometimes. And taking baby steps, little things at a time. And sometimes I say, do one hard thing a week or whatever time frame you want. And don't do more than that, just one at a time. And then once I've gone through that, either letting go of that thing or that situation, then I can look at the next one. And it's just one baby step after another.
Well, I love that idea of support, because I think about even me decluttering my closet. It's so much nicer to have somebody there with me to be like, what do you think about this? Michelle, honestly, I know you like it. It doesn't look that good on you. Okay, cool. Get rid of it. Right. Or, anything let's go through it and reminisce. When my parents have moved houses multiple times, let's go through and let's decide, in these 19 pictures that literally have the same people in them, is there one that you are like, that is the one I'm going to keep, and it's going to remind me of that time that we had? Do I need 19 versions of the same picture? No, I don't. I need one. And so it is so helpful when you have somebody else doing it with you, to share the memory, to maybe give perspective, to give you the encouragement and maybe even the permission to let go of some things. Because I know there's a little bit of personality trait in some of this. I have maybe too easy a time letting go of things. My sister, on the other hand, has a really hard time letting go of anything. And I am grateful for some of the things of mine that she chose to hang on to. I'll never forget when my parents moved out of the house we grew up in. I had all my gymnastics medals and trophies kind of boxed up, because I don't need to display them. Nobody cares. I don't even care about them. But when they were moving, are there some of these that you would like to keep? So I picked out the ones that really meant something to me, not because it was a gold medal, because sometimes it wasn't. It was just, that was the best beam routine I ever did. I got the best score on this. I really felt crappy and I did really good. Or they awarded me that, the girl who tries the hardest trophy. Those are the things that I know exactly what that meet was, or that event was, or that camp was. And those are the ones that were special. I didn't care about any of the other ones. 2 years later, I'm at my sister's house. She got my box of medals and trophies. I'm like, what are you doing? I couldn't let you get rid of them. Oh my goodness. Now, truly, I did not care. I did not want them. And okay, now it's yours. So not my problem. But there have been some things, whether it's my dad or my sister, that they've hung on to. And I'm like, wow, I'm so glad you have that. Because now when I'm 50, how fun is it to get to look at this thing when I was 4 with this girl that's my first friend. And this is the first picture we have together. And I don't know I don't know if I ever would have had that picture, right? So I do think there's a little bit of balance that we can all learn from each other, and sometimes being too quick to discard something, and maybe you're going to regret that later. So maybe we can just tuck it away and then revisit it and go through that process with support. What about preventing the accumulation in the first place? What are some tips and ideas that you have for that? Sasha's like, yes, please.
Oh, that's hard. I basically don't shop much anymore. That's if you don't go to malls and if you avoid browsing Amazon and other online buying locations and you just try to actually stop buying for a period of time, that helps. And then while you're taking a break maybe from accumulating anything new unless it's absolutely important and necessary, you sift through some of your stuff and you decide whether you're really using it or needing it. And if you just, again, it's developing habits and discerning eyes and mindsets, and we've got to start cultivating that habit of really evaluating everything before we buy it, and instead of just sort of doing it without thinking unconsciously or just as a previous habit. We have to develop new habits of evaluating what we're buying, and maybe we could divert some of our money into experiences more than stuff. For example, I'm big on experiences instead of gift giving or accumulating more things at this point in my life.
I agree. I am that Scrooge that many, many, many years ago, I told my friends, we are done with the whole gift exchange. Okay. Literally, I teach a class called Holiday Survival, and a big stress up with the holidays is people like getting the right gift. And my joke is nobody needs another candle. And the reason that is the phrase is because when I was a personal trainer, I want to express my gratitude. And what do? You buy a gift. Well, what can I get these people who have more money than I could ever imagine that isn't going to break my bank, but that would actually matter to them? So one year, this is years ago, when the gigantic 3-wick candles first came out, and they were amazing, glorious, stunning visual things. And they were $80. And never in my world would I pay $80 for a candle. This is, 20 years ago, when I'm broke as a joke because I'm a personal trainer, right?
I'm not going to pay $80 today for a candle. I cannot.
Well, I tell you, I was so excited because I knew this client, it's so her, it's going to be so beautiful. I can already see where she's going to put it. I was so proud of this gift. I go that day, we exchange gifts, and this is not made up. This is 100% true. She gave me the exact same candle. Same scent and everything. And she was so proud of her choice because she knew Michelle would never buy herself an $80 candle. And she knew I was going to love it. And we laughed and laughed. And that's where nobody needs another candle. That's where that came from. And so, again, sometimes we do these things out of obligation. One of the things that I ask myself if I'm contemplating a purchase is, number one, does it matter? If the answer is yes, it matters, I have to articulate, why does this matter? Why does this matter to me? Why does it matter for me to part with my money to have this thing? What about this thing is going to make my life better? And if it really isn't going to make my life better, then it actually doesn't matter. So I'm not going to spend it. I don't have unlimited funds. I mean, maybe if I had unlimited funds, again, this is where we just, because we can, we do. But even if I can, why? Like, let me do something else. Or maybe I'll need those funds later, like when we have a melanoma diagnosis and get to shell out 10 grand for that instead, right? Like, at some point, your stuff doesn't matter. And yet here I have stuff, and now what am I going to do with all my stuff? So yeah, the questions are, does this bring value to my life? And maybe, Lisa, you've seen this or you recognize it, but we hang on to things because we paid a lot of money for it, or because it's a good financial decision, right? I can't let go of that. It's brand new and I haven't even worn it. Right. You haven't worn it in 7 years. Okay. So how is it helping hanging in the closet? Or yes, I have this rental property and it's a great rental. It's a great financial decision. I should keep it because that financially is the right decision. But what about emotionally? What about my time and energy? Is it the right decision for those things? And I think sometimes we do put so much emphasis on the dollars, especially when it comes to the possessions, right? That we don't take into account the time and the energy and the emotion of the things. What in your experience do you see with that?
Oh, the money piece makes it hard sometimes to give up items. You think, oh, it's worth such and such, or I paid this much for it and it's valuable, or maybe I could sell it, but no one is probably willing to pay what you bought it for. And the value just isn't what you think it is. And then you have to reevaluate everything you buy. And sometimes you just have to find a good home for that item and just separate yourself from what you think it is worth financially and just find a good home for it if you're ready to let go of it, and just don't think about the money part.
Yeah, that brings up the recycling portion of everything. So, when you are getting rid of things, do you suggest people recycle? Do you suggest people just trash it? Like what is a good boundary and standard to set for yourself when you are ready to go through your items and start getting rid of things?
Absolutely recycle if you can. But not all things can be recycled, and a lot of things end up in landfill. But to the best of our abilities, I think we should try to find a place for it. And that could be that we advertise it as a free item, snap a picture of it and place it on a, Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace or something, and just say free, because there are people who might really value or need that item. And so I always suggest doing that before any sort of trash people put dumpsters in the driveways of houses of their parents or someone that has passed away. And that just kind of makes me feel really bad. I think that, again, we have to reevaluate how much stuff we have and what we are leaving for our kids when we pass, because I went through that with both parents and clearing out 2 separate households. And it was just completely overwhelming. And I wish that they had kind of thinned things out along the way instead of leaving that behind, because it can be a burden. And I don't think they wanted it to be a burden, my parents, but we need to think about if our stuff is becoming a burden, because what we leave behind is our legacy, and it can be a gift or it can be a burden. And we just need to be more thoughtful and conscientious about that.
So how do we start that process, right? Like, this is a life cycle. We are all eventually going to be facing the situation. It is a life cycle. No one's getting out of this alive, like literally. So how do we start that conversation? Like, up next, Mom, it's you. And we need to start working through some of these items, because when you pass, what do you want me to do with them? How do you want me to navigate your items? Do you want me to give them away? Do you want me to keep them? If you want me to keep them, why do you want me to keep them? Where am I going to keep them? So did you start talking to your parents about it? Do you now teach people to talk about it?
Yeah, I talk a lot about that in my book. And each of my parents had a very different way of looking at it and personality. And my mom worked with me to thin things out before she passed. And my dad was one of those who kept everything, and just in case it was useful. And I understand that and respect that. He was from the Depression years. He lived through that. I don't know what that's like. But with both of them, you have to start with the easy stuff and the non-sentimental items, and start to consider assisting them if they're still alive, or working on your own stuff, the things that are not sentimental, things that are just that you just haven't taken the time to get rid of. You may have thrown it in the garage or in a box or in a closet, and you want to get rid of it, but just don't take the time. So I suggest people actually cultivate habits and almost a schedule, that they maybe take an hour each week on a specific day. A Tuesday morning, they take an hour and they actually load that stuff in the car to take it to a donation center, or they sort through that one box or that one closet or that one drawer, that one space, and just make it sort of a habit that you bring into your schedule. And you maybe even schedule it in your calendar and actually have whatever you want to call it, a clearing space where you know you're going to work on some of your stuff, starting with the easiest non-sentimental items first and working your way to harder things with time. And then you will pick up momentum with that habit and cultivating that into your schedule.
I think that process as you go is so helpful, because it does also, while you're doing that, it highlights how many things we have that we don't need or that just aren't useful anymore. And that permission to let go of things. I know for my sister, because she has the house and I have this small 800 square foot condo, she had a lot of feelings like she was obligated to take mom and dad's things because she has the space for it. And I tried to give her permission to not do that, but that's her own expectation of her, right? Or maybe a little bit of it was from mom and dad, but we have things at their house too that they've stored for us. So I think it depends on the nature of the relationship you have with family members as you're going through these. I will tell you, I'm super grateful. My parents have picked up and packed and moved so many more times since we've been grown than growing up. It's funny, actually. And we've had these conversations because now they're in a bigger property. I'm like, look, no more accumulating. You're supposed to be downsizing at this age, not, upsizing. And they have said, look, anything that we've had that's sentimental, we've already dispersed to you all. We have accumulated nothing that matters. So they've given us permission, right? When we're done, you hand the keys over to the estate salespeople and you walk away. You go through it maybe one time if there's something you want. You are not obligated to keep any of this at all, ever. And so I'm super grateful we have those conversations as a family. And yet I know a lot don't, because again, it kind of goes into the conversation of death and, oh, you just want my things, or don't you want to keep things of me to remember me? What, you're just ready to get rid of me altogether? So there's a lot of emotion that goes along with all of that as well, which is why these things are really, really hard.
I had a friend who it's like a 30-day challenge where you go and you take one thing, you remove one thing every day for 30 days. And she said what ended up happening is she ended up having 8 bags. She was like, I just went nuts for 30 days. I gave myself permission to just go, just start. And so I feel like that's a lot of part of the process, is just giving yourself permission to go through those emotions, cry if you need to cry. I've been crying a lot lately, and it's because I've given myself permission to cry. So, maybe taking on that challenge of simplifying your life. Could be a person, could be a place, could be a thing. Getting rid of one thing per day for the next 30 days.
And I think maybe too, Lisa, you chime in on this, but getting rid of something doesn't mean that it's bad, right? Even a person. I have learned over the course of my journey that even though this person may be no longer suited for me, or I'm no longer suited for them, it doesn't negate the fact that there were these amazing things. They can be two things. I can still appreciate and acknowledge and cherish all these things, and it's no longer good. It's no longer necessary. But I think sometimes when it ends or we give something away, it is somehow symbolic of, well, we don't care about it, or it was useless, or it kind of puts it all into its whole experience as bad. And that's why I'm getting rid of it. And I think that's a big mindset shift that really helped for me, even going forward now, when there's a person, place, or thing that no longer suits me, or I no longer suit it, to not take it personally, to not, let it tarnish the entire experience, but to look at things separately. Is that, Lisa, something that you find would be helpful for people to kind of navigate through this whole letting go and simplifying process?
Yes. If your intention is to create a new present space for yourself that honors where you are now and your well-being and your peace of mind, it's okay to let go of things that don't fit into that, and to do it with honor that it was important at one point, but now you're creating a new part of your life, a new space in place in your life, and that may look different. And so, yeah, it's okay to move and transition into a new part of your life and do it with gentleness to yourself and respect for others or things that you let go of in the process.
And I think a lot of times why we don't let go is the fear, right? I'm afraid I'm going to need it, or I'm afraid I'm going to miss it, or I'm going to be afraid that I wish I hadn't let it go. I have experienced almost always, it feels really good. It does feel lighter and more peaceful and more calm, and simple is better. I mean, it just is. So I know we have to wrap up here, but any closing thoughts, Sasha? Any questions, comments, ideas? And then Lisa, we're going to let you officially close us out.
It goes back to like the season I'm in right now, and just bake some grace into it. Bake grace into everything that you do. I mean, it's the only thing I can really come up with, like, just give yourself some grace. And that's where I'm at right now with myself. Sasha, stop, pause, breathe, feel, navigate, grace. All of it is grace. You're human. Feel the feelings. Get rid of person, places, things. Put pause. Oh, I love that idea of pausing things, because then it's like, I don't forever have to get rid of it, but right now it does not suit me. But that right there, that's grace. That's grace.
I love it. Lisa, final thoughts, tips, ideas?
I love that grace and interjecting grace into this process. And we need to tap into our heart and our gut. And if we feel lighter, if we feel peace, if we feel more energy in a process of letting go of something or someone or a period in our life, then I think we're moving in the right direction. And if we lean into that feeling and if we feel light and we feel the dissipation of heavy emotions ebbing away, I think we're in the right track. And I encourage people to continue to go down that bravely. It's not easy. It can be hard, but the rewards can be pretty amazing. And the creation of a life that's really good for us and brings us ultimate satisfaction in our lives now is worth the effort.
Love it. As people who listen to this know, hard now or harder later, and that's exactly what it is. This has been such a great conversation. I think with the holidays and the end of the year, people are maybe ready to evaluate and do some of this hard work. And I definitely encourage anybody to do that. So Lisa, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a fantastic conversation. Everybody listening, thank you. We always appreciate that you tune into us. And now you know it's your turn to go and be a better being.
Thank you for listening to the Be a Better Being podcast. Michelle and Sasha hope that what you heard today inspires you to embrace this journey of life with an open mind, a kind heart, and a willingness to learn and evolve. If you enjoyed the content, please help spread their message by subscribing, sharing, and leaving a 5-star review. If you have a show topic idea or would like to be a guest, please visit betterbeings.net and fill out a contact form. Until next time, go and be a better being.